What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, Dalton, Wasserman, back here with you guys for another off-season topic where we're taking a look at all 32 teams in the NFL. And today, we're taking a look at the best value players for every single team. There's a lot that goes into that. Mainly contract stuff, right? And we'll talk about okay, we'll look at these players that are on either rookie contracts or deals that we think are big time value, and we'll explain why we think they're the most valuable. Depends on the position that they play, how well they've been playing, their outlook moving forward, and of course the contracts that they are on there. So excited about this topic. It's gonna be a lot of fun anytime we get to touch on every single team. I really enjoyed it. I feel like the chat's always very active for this one. Dalton, how you doing, my friend? I was told that you once again made the trip to the great city of Chicago, and you said that you are still full from your time in Chicago. So what do we get into? And how long is the drive for you? Because you're kind of, I feel like that's kind of a short trip if you're driving the whole way.
Oh, yeah, no, it's really not that bad as long as you get through some of the traffic you get, obviously, once you get there. But usually about 4.5 hours, Trev. But yeah, I had to go up Blues Fest. Every year in June, they do Chicago Blues Fest for 4 days. I only did 3 of them, and then obviously ate the first thing I did when I got there is eat a deep dish, which, of course, it's just tradition when you go, Obviously, you have to do it. Had a deep dish, had some street tacos, had a double cheeseburger at another place I used to go to all the time. So just pretty much sat around listening to music and eating food all weekend up there, which is not many better towns to do it in for sure.
Chicago is a phenomenal food city. I know it's a polarizing food city because if you don't like deep dish pizza, I think people just tend to throw all of Chicago out the window, and they're just no, terrible food city. They don't know how to do pizza, all that stuff. I think Chicago is an excellent food city. I also like deep dish pizzas. I don't know, some people are very prideful on how they like to enjoy their pizzas. I'm pretty open. I don't have any allegiances is the thing. I'm from the state of Florida. There's no, Florida's a giant melting pot. I don't really have much food allegiance coming from Florida. And so I'm cool with the New York style. I'm cool with the deep dish. I'm good with all of that.
See, there's a couple of funny dynamics when it comes to the Chicago pizza because, when I was living there, a lot of people born and raised in Chicago, they're like, we don't like deep dish. They call it tourist pizza. They say just everybody else comes and eats it. And I'm gonna go on a rant, probably piss off some Bears fans here, but I've been saying this a long time. You know me, I'm a New Yorker. I'm in on a New York slice all day long. In Chicago, the way they cut their thin crust is what bothers me. They cut it into those tiny little squares like this, and I just don't understand. I've never understood the point of that, the way they eat their thin crust pizza. That bothers me more. I love deep dish. Deep dish is fantastic. I'm in on it. I'll admit, with just that giant pile of cheese, it's a special occasion thing. You wouldn't eat it every day or you'd just die. But, when they're cutting their thin crust and they have those tiny little squares, Trev, I got to eat 100 of them to get what I would get out of 2 New York slices. I never understood the way, and also, I mean, listen, every guy who slices pizza in Chicago, his forearms got to be looking like Popeye because it's just they're dicing the whole darn thing up. I never understood the thin crust and with the way they do it, or you get those little corner pieces that are this big. It makes no sense to me. I love deep dish. I'll eat that. Maybe not all the time because, again, that would get me killed. But, I've never understood it. And you can't find a New York slice there cut the proper way to save your life in that city. Just can't find it. That's the only thing that ever bothered me with the scene there.
It is so on brand for you to have a controversial Chicago pizza take, but it's not that deep dish is good or bad. It's literally how they slice the other pizzas. So for you to have a controversial take that is almost controversial on top of controversial is so on brand for you. I'm so glad that we went down this road and the people listening got to experience this. This is wonderful. Okay, we've got some breaking news. Sort of breaking news, more of just the news that has happened around the NFL that we wanted to touch on here before we got into the topic of the day, talking about the best value players on every single team. The first one is that Aaron Rodgers has officially signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, they're going through free agency. They don't end up making a splash at quarterback. They see Justin Fields and Russell Wilson sign elsewhere. They've got Mason Rudolph on the roster. They don't draft a quarterback. They had multiple opportunities to draft basically anybody that wasn't Cam Ward. We thought Shedeur Sanders would be the target for them, perhaps even in the first round, maybe the second round. Well, they didn't have a second round pick because of DK Metcalf, but we're like, okay, well, there's no way Shedeur's making it to the third. He does. They still pass on him. They don't even get a quarterback until the sixth round, and we go, okay, what's going on here? They must know that Rodgers is in hand, and then it became this whole, okay, well, if you just know it, why is this not official yet? And maybe it was, or Aaron Rodgers just did not want to participate in OTAs, and he didn't want to get yelled at for not being at OTAs if he was signed by the Steelers. But now he is officially signed. So the details of this, it's a 1-year, $13.6 million contract, $10 million in guarantees, can be worth up to $19.5 million in total incentives. Dalton, we have talked on this very program here about how we're a little skeptical about what's going on in Pittsburgh and sort of just the offensive identity that they might have. And that's been certainly cause for concern without Aaron Rodgers on the roster. But we've even operated with the fact that we knew that this was probably going to happen at some point, and we still didn't really love it. And so I'm curious now that this is official. Any updated thoughts at all whatsoever on the Steelers, or do you still have the big causes for concern with their passing attack, given who Rodgers has been over the last couple of years?
Yeah, fitting that we started this show talking about piles of cheese, and now we're going to talk about a couple of ex-Packers. But anyway, I think with Rodgers and the Steelers, I don't look at them, even with Rodgers, any different than I did at the end of the season. You look at their offense last year, and all it was Russell Wilson and George Pickens chucking up go balls and trying to just manufacture points that way, and it was kind of high variance in that sense. Now, I think the difference is Rodgers might be, a little shorter in the passing game and a little more efficient and accurate underneath, but last year he struggled to throw the ball vertically down the field for the Jets, and, you look at the same shortage of weapons. You replace Pickens with DK Metcalf, and you've got, honestly, Metcalf, I would take him over Pickens as a player, but they're a very similar style, and I don't think he's so much better that it's a substantial upgrade. And there's a lack of depth at receiver. There's major questions at offensive tackle, maybe even more so than there were with the Jets last year and going into this year if he were to stay. So I really don't look at this team any differently. Their defense is going to have them competing for a wild card spot. Rodgers, he can still get up there and read the line of scrimmage and make his reads, and maybe there will be less variance to this passing offense than there was last year when it was so reliant on the deep ball. But Russell Wilson also had the best deep passing grade in the league last year, so he made it work. This doesn't do much for me. It just feels like the Steelers are stalling 1 year at a time, and they're going to try to continue to win a lot of games with their defense, especially the defensive line. I don't see where the flow of this offense comes from, and Rodgers only offers at this point. We've seen it 2022, he was just decent. Last year, he was just decent with a boatload of volume. I don't think this offers the ceiling for the Steelers to compete with Baltimore, with Buffalo, with Kansas City, with the elite teams in the AFC.
Over the last 2 years, Rodgers' 2.72 time to throw average, one of the quicker time to throw averages in the NFL. And I think that we saw this with Brady when he got to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Bucs had a pretty good offensive line in front of Tom Brady, but he didn't want to take hits, and especially that last season that he was in Tampa Bay. Not that I would say the main issues of the offense were Tom Brady's fault, because I don't think that that's the case. But I don't think that he was blameless in their offensive struggles either, because he really he would not hold on to the ball. It was basically like, this thing's coming out in 3 seconds. I'm not getting hit anymore. I'm over 40 years old, and Aaron Rodgers is over 40 years old now, I believe. Right? He's over 40?
He is 40. He's 40 now, yes.
He's right at 40.
He'll be 41 in December, I think.
Okay, so, he's sort of along the same timeline, and we kind of saw it from Rodgers, especially with him coming off of the Achilles injury. He just doesn't want to take hits. And that's what was so perplexing for us when we talked about the Steelers' offense in Arthur Smith's offense of like, okay, you had DK Metcalf, you traded for DK Metcalf, and you had George Pickens on the roster. These are two hold on to the ball a while, throw the deep ball type of wide receivers, which actually would have worked really well for Russell Wilson, and that's why Russell Wilson was still able to be pretty productive because of that offensive philosophy last year. But that's not really how Rodgers wants to play the game, and unfortunately, for as much as I think that DK Metcalf is a good wide receiver, fourth separation percentile against all coverages over the last 2 years specifically. Now, Davante Adams wasn't really that much better. I think he was 28th percentile in total separation versus all coverages. But at least Davante Adams knows how to win very quickly. When he creates separation, he can create separation out of his releases off of press coverage. Metcalf isn't really that type of receiver. Metcalf is like, okay, I'm going to create my separation by running 9 routes and post routes deep down the field, and I'm still going to be a 50-50 guy, but at least hopefully my athleticism, my long speed will be able to create that separation if I can get off the line of scrimmage clean. And so if it works, great. But there's just not a lot of what we have seen over the last couple of years that make you feel good about this specific connection, other than the fact that, okay, Aaron Rodgers is not Mason Rudolph. Okay, Aaron Rodgers is not a 6th-round rookie in Will Howard. That's the positives here, but independent of those two things, it's hard for me to look at this and think that it's an ideal pairing with him going to the Steelers.
It just makes me feel like with Mason Rudolph starting, there's not a chance I would have picked them to make the playoffs. This makes me think about, okay, maybe if I'm making a prediction, they make the playoffs like last year and lose in the first round. But I just don't see this team as any better than they were last year. And honestly, Wilson had a better passing grade. He could work the ball vertically down the field last year. I don't even see how there's a chance that this could even be worse than last year, and especially based on the way we saw Rodgers play for most of the year last year. Now he's going behind a line that is even worse in pass protection, has major questions at offensive tackle. It doesn't move me at all. It just goes, okay, for me, it's just the Steelers keep themselves in wild card contention, but they're still, to me, even with Rodgers, they're nowhere near Baltimore. And honestly, they're still in that tier. Cincinnati obviously has other issues, but at least they have Joe Burrow. I think that's really the tier you're talking about, is the wild card, second tier, 8 to 10 win kind of group in the AFC that you have with some other teams like Houston, like Cincinnati, like maybe the Chargers and Denver, and teams in that grouping where they were last year. It doesn't really improve them in any way.
So let's move on to the next piece of news, and that's Jaire Alexander is now available to sign wherever he wants. And so reports have come out since the Packers have released him that, man, they have been trying to trade him for a while now. It was reported, I believe Albert Breer reported this, that he was offered a restructured contract that was pretty heavily incentive-based for Jaire Alexander that would have still made him a free agent next offseason, which he probably would have wanted. So it was basically like, hey, do you want to stick in Green Bay for at least one more season? Let's test you out. Let's see if you're healthy, and let's see if maybe we can come to an agreement a year from now to keep you on the team. And Alexander didn't want that. And so after that, they tried to trade him around free agency. They tried to trade him during the draft, and they couldn't find anybody that was willing to take on his contract, and that's ultimately why he gets released. Now, Alexander, he's still just 28 years old. He is still a great cornerback when he is fully healthy. The last time that he played over 1,000 snaps in his season was 2020, but during that season, he had an elite 91.9 coverage grade. But even throughout the injuries, which I had written them down here, he has only played 15 games, at least 15 games, one time since that 2020 season, and that was in 2022. In 2021, he played just 4 games because of his shoulder injury. In 2023, he played just 7 games due to a back and shoulder injury. And then last year in 2024, he played just 7 games because he had a quad injury to start, and then he had a PCL injury after that. And so this dude just hasn't been healthy. And for the Packers, the best ability is availability at this point. And you could tell, talking about Jaire Alexander, how frustrated they were, whether it was Brian Gutekunst, their general manager, or Matt LaFleur, their head coach. They're frustrated that their top corner, who they're trying to build their secondary identity around, is not out there on the field. But even through all the injury, Jaire's never had a single season coverage grade below 73 in his entire career. Like, this dude is one of the best corners in the game. There's no question about it. And so just your thoughts here, Dalton, on the Packers ultimately releasing Jaire Alexander. I have some thoughts on, I'm wondering why they didn't hit corner a little bit more throughout the offseason, specifically in the draft. Packers fans seem to be okay with their current situation, which is a combination of Keyshawn Nixon, who played well last year. He could play outside corner for you. Nate Hobbs, I guess, is going to play outside corner for you. You signed him from the Raiders. He's sort of that inside-out type of slot and outside corner. I guess they're going to play him on the outside because Javon Bullard is probably going to be more of your slot defender because they played him as sort of a safety slot hybrid like he was played at Georgia. And then you've got Carrington Valentine, who's sort of that third cornerback behind them because they don't have Eric Stokes either. So that's the cornerback room for Green Bay. I even thought this isn't just hindsight from releasing Alexander. I thought of this during draft weekend as well. They had the opportunity to draft Trey Amos in the second round, and they took Anthony Belton over him. And, they had the opportunity to draft Quincy Riley in the fifth round over Barron Sorrell, which I like Belton and Sorrell. I want to make it clear, I don't hate either of those players, but you knew that this Alexander move was coming. So very clearly they're just okay with their cornerback room. And Dalton, to me, that's more faith than I would have in a division that, my goodness, feels like it's just going to be a race to 40 points every single week.
Yeah, I think you look at the Packers now, and I know that we need a little bit of a bounce back from Jordan Love. We've talked about that. I think the biggest concern now has to just be with their pass defense as a whole, right? Because they really struggled to rush the passer, especially with 4 pass rushers last year. They need guys like Lucas Van Ness and Rashawn Gary, Devontae Wyatt, those guys to step up front. But now that they're so thin at cornerback, and look at, you just mentioned it, look at the division you're playing in and the weapons you have to deal with when you're talking about Detroit with St. Brown and Jamison Williams, the Bears with all the weapons they've got this offseason, DJ Moore and Luther Burden, Colson Loveland, all those guys. The Vikings, obviously, with Jefferson and Addison. I mean, if you can't cover in this division, you're going to have a major problem. The Lions have seen that before. The Bears have seen that before, and especially with the lack of pass rush. The Packers' pass defense, for me, might be the biggest concern on their entire team. And you mentioned it. If they get in all these shootouts and we need to bounce back from Jordan Love and he's trying to force things down the field, there's a scenario where this could go very, very wrong. So I'm with you. I'd be very concerned about the lack of top end and even the lack of depth at cornerback for him. And that's coupled with a pass rush unit that was bottom 10 in the league last year, especially when they weren't blitzing. Jeff Hafley may have to get more aggressive up front and force it to help these guys out in coverage. But it's a concern for me. I think especially with those high-flying offenses that you're going to see in the NFC North, like you mentioned, I'm very worried about this Packers defense.
We'll see. It's gonna, like I said, it's going to be. Now, what about potential landing spots? Potential landing spots. So the Vikings would be fun, right? Obviously, just because of the rivalry with Justin Jefferson. And they need it. The Vikings are trying to replace, I think it's at least over 1,500. It might be over 1,900 snaps at cornerback that they had last year with Shaq Griffin no longer on the team. Stephon Gilmore's not there anymore. Can't bind him if you just want to throw in overall secondary players, also no longer there. So they're replacing a lot of snaps in their secondary. So I think they could use Jaire Alexander just from, hey, we need to feel better about who we have at cornerback there. The Eagles are a team that I threw out there. They've got Cooper DeJean. They have Quinyon Mitchell. They're moving on from Darius Slay. He's not there. He's in Pittsburgh anymore. Do you want to bring a veteran in? They don't have Isaiah Rodgers either. Isaiah Rodgers is also gone from that group. I think Carolina's sort of a wild card here, depending on how they view their team currently. Alexander also grew up in the Charlotte area. He played high school football just outside of Charlotte, so it's a little bit of a homecoming for him in that regard if he were to sign with the Panthers. I think the Ravens also sort of make sense with them moving on for Brandon Stevens. Sure, they signed Chidobe Awuzie, but that's just a 1 year. I think it was around a $1 million, $2 million deal, so it's not like they were breaking the bank to bring him in, and he's scheduled to start for them as an outside corner, so I think they could be interested as well. But any of those landing spots or any others jump out to you for Alexander services?
I think when it comes to contenders, you mentioned the 3. The Eagles have the cap space to do it almost just for the fun of it because they're so loaded and you can just do the same thing, replace Darius Slay with Alexander and throw him out there on the outside. The Rams are the one that I think, for me, they need him the most. I think at cornerback and linebacker, those are the 2 spots that concern me with the Rams defense. But if they bring in Alexander, and one of the things that you look at when it comes to splits, over the last 3 years, got an 86.5 zone coverage grade and just a 68.8 man coverage grade. So you look at those fits you're talking about when it's the Eagles, when it's the Rams. I even think about if they could find any money to do it, I think the Atlanta Falcons, he'd be a great addition to. But when you're looking at the contenders, Eagles, Rams, Ravens make sense because they can move Marlon Humphrey back into the slot like they had the second half of last year. But to me, the Rams jump out, and we'll see. The other factor in this might be who is trading for Jalen Ramsey, right? And the Rams have obviously been in that mix as well. That you wonder which one of those things is going to happen first. Is it going to be the Ramsey trade? Is Alexander just going to get proactive and sign somewhere? Which market is going to affect the other first? But I think the Rams, between one of those 2 guys, they're definitely in on it. And I would expect that they're going to be heavily in on signing either because they don't have a ton of a high-end talent at corner. You could argue if Alexander is healthy, he's easily the best corner on that team if he joins them.
Yep, the Rams are a good call out as well. That was one of the first teams that I thought of, so I'm glad that you brought that team up there because I do agree with that one. All right, let's dig into the topic of the day. Let's talk about the best value players on every single team that we have here in the NFL. And like we talked about at the very top of the show, a lot of things go into this, mainly contracts, right? Because we talk about value, it's, hey, how much are you getting out of a player that you are paying for them? And so a lot of guys who are on rookie contracts, they get a little bit of a boost, and we'll probably hear about a lot of guys who are on those rookie deals here throughout this exercise, but it also goes into sort of how they played lately, how we think they're going to play moving forward. Are they truly a value on the contract and how they're playing? So we split this up. I took the first 16 teams that we have here in alphabetical order, and then you took the other 16 teams. For the Arizona Cardinals, I started out with this one. I said Paris Campbell. I think that Paris Campbell is the best value player for the Arizona Cardinals.
Paris Johnson.
Paris Campbell, not the wide receiver. They don't have Paris Campbell. Was he actually on the Cardinals at some point, or am I literally just thinking of mixing up the names?
Let me look into it. I know he wasn't he in Philadelphia last year?
Come on, give me 1 year. Give me 1 year to save myself here from messing up this name.
Oh boy. All right.
Tell me Paris Campbell played for them for 1 year.
Give me 1 second.
Give me 1 year.
Paris Campbell play in Arizona. He played in Indianapolis, New York, Philadelphia, and now he's in Dallas. Paris Campbell was never an Arizona Cardinal. You're just I don't know why you're thinking about him. Maybe you had a draft prior on him that you're still trying to fix up here or what.
No, I didn't love him actually. Anyways, offensive tackle Paris Johnson Jr. is the highest value player that I think is on the Cardinals right now. When you look at his rookie contract overall, the entirety of it pays him about $7 million per year on average. That's just the 13th highest that you have on the Cardinals books. He got an 80.1 pass blocking or overall blocking grade last season and a 78.8 pass blocking season last year. He's got a 2-year contract, or he's got 2 years still left on his rookie deal, and then they have obviously the club option after that 5th-year option for him as a former first-round pick. So to have a guy who can play at left tackle for you, 80.1 overall PFF blocking grade is a pretty good score, especially for you in your second season. And so with him having 2 more years on that deal, it's just very, very advantageous for them to have such an impactful player at an impactful position there. So for him to be the 13th highest paid player on the team, goodness. I went with Paris Johnson Jr. here for the Cardinals.
I absolutely agree. I think when you get past the first half of his rookie year, he really, he took 8 to 10 weeks to find his footing in the NFL, and he was playing right tackle his rookie year. So this past year was his first year playing left tackle in the NFL, and he was that good. I think he's one of the foundational pieces of this Cardinals offense. They got to fix up the rest of the offensive line here a little bit in the near future, but Johnson's definitely a cornerstone. He's becoming one of the best tackles in the league, and I love the call out here. The value you get on a left tackle, a franchise left tackle on his rookie contract is spectacular. So he's really good, and I think you might start getting to see him in those Pro Bowl type of elite conversations this year in his second year starting a left tackle for them.
For the Atlanta Falcons, you could go with Michael Penix here, depending on what you think of him long term. Certainly, if you think that he's just going to absolutely hit the ground running this upcoming season, he would probably be the highest valued player because his cap number this upcoming season is $5.2 million. And when you talk about quarterbacks making $50-60 million a year, if you can go toe-to-toe or even be in the same area code as those guys that are making that much money, it's massive value. So you could go with Michael Penix here. Ultimately, I went with Drake London. And I went with Drake London specifically over Bijan Robinson because both of these guys getting paid close to the same amount this upcoming season. Bijan Robinson, obviously elite, 92.1 overall PFF grade last season as a rusher and receiver. He was fantastic. He established himself as one of the best backs in the NFL. So anytime that's the case and you're still on a rookie contract, heavy value there. He's getting paid $5.9 million this year on the cap. Drake London's a little bit more at 6.8, but just because of the wide receiver positional value there for him, and London has been able to stack a couple of seasons of really great play. That's why I ended up going with Drake London. He's in the final year of his rookie deal, and then you do have that 5th-year option after that, but 90 80.1 receiving grade from him in 2024. I think that he is a top 15, top 12, you could argue potentially a top 10 wide receiver in the league. And so for him to play on that cost control deal, Drake London is the guy that I went with here for the Falcons.
Yeah, this 2022 receiver class is definitely a feature in this episode. We'll see a couple more of these guys later. But London, look, I'm all in. We did a film breakdown of Michael Penix and those 3 starts he made last year, and one of the themes of it is the trust that he already has in Drake London and the ability to get the ball to him on any route. I think Drake London's in for an explosive year. I think he's going to be the breakout superstar at the wide receiver position this year with as much as Michael Penix trusts him. Trev, in those 3 games, London had a 35% threat percentage. I believe he led the league, and he led the league. He had a 90 receiving grade in those 3 games. Penix and London, it's a perfect pairing. Penix with the big arm to get the ball anywhere. London's a terrific route runner, and obviously we know the size and the speed and everything he can do. I think he's really the breakout superstar at wide receiver this year.
Yeah, I had Michael Penix Jr. and Drake London as my number 10 quarterback and pass catcher duo sort of heading into this upcoming season and beyond. And I understand I caught some flack for that one because there's a lot of established veterans and wide receivers on other teams that are behind them on the list. And I understand they haven't proven it yet, but I've got a lot of faith in them. I think that they are going to be an elite quarterback and wide receiver duo moving forward. For the Baltimore Ravens, they haven't signed Kyle Hamilton to a contract extension yet. And so him playing on a rookie deal still, it has to be Kyle Hamilton. This is a defensive player of the year type of talent, somebody who can do everything for you. He could play free safety. He could play strong safety. He could play as a slot defender. We've even seen him play some linebacker, some outside corner. I mean, Kyle Hamilton can do it all for you. His contract currently right now is a $4 million per year average. That's just 13th highest on the team. He's getting $5.2 million in his final year, and then we have the 5th year option next year for him. PFF grades of 87.6, 86.4, and 90.0 in each of the last 3 seasons, which are his first 3 seasons into the NFL. Versatility, talent. I mean, when you talk about a guy who is worth every single dollar you are paying him, Kyle Hamilton's contract extension is about to be massive. He is, without question, in my opinion, the best value player on the Baltimore Ravens right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's only, 4 or 5 guys in the conversation for best safety in the NFL, and he's squarely in it. If you have him number 1, I have no complaints about it. Just someone who does everything. You mentioned it. Free safety, strong safety, linebacker, slot, probably line up off the edge if you want him to and rush the passer. I mean, he's just one of the few players in football that does everything at an elite level, and you mentioned it. Once he signs that extension, he's going to be the highest paid safety probably we've ever seen, and he'll certainly deserve it, but he's everything they could have possibly wanted in him when they drafted him, and to still have him at this price. And again, you're going to get to the extension eventually, but Hamilton's an elite football player at an elite price. It's unbelievable what he's done his first few years in the league, and now you get him paired with Malachi Starks in Baltimore there. It's not going to be a fun secondary to throw into.
We've got, and we talked about Jaire Alexander maybe adding to that room. I mean, if they do, man, the talent that is in that Baltimore secondary. Tyler Linderbaum was kind of right behind him when it came to guys who are really good and where they are on the current salary cap. So Tyler Linderbaum's in there as well, but just the value that the versatility of Kyle Hamilton has, that pushed him above Tyler Linderbaum, who was also a really good player who I think they're getting great value from as well as their starting center. For the Carolina Panthers, I went with Bryce Young. Bryce Young, now it's not like it's this crazy discount for them. He is still the 5th highest paid player, even with him being on his rookie deal this upcoming season. He's $10.3 million on the cap there. And they don't have really that many superstars that are getting paid a lot of money ahead of him. He's got 1 more year left on his deal. $12 million would be next season for them. And then you've got that 5th year option for Bryce Young. Struggled throughout his first year in the NFL just as a rookie, but it's like, that's okay. It's a rookie quarterback. The beginning of last year was very bad. He gets benched, right? And then he comes back, and from week 10 on, 85.3 passing grade. So that alone, in my opinion, makes him the choice here, because if you have something with Bryce Young, even if it's a number 1 overall pick and the rookie contract is higher because of how high he got selected, that is still the value. Like we mentioned, you've got quarterbacks that are making 40, 50, 60 million dollars a year. And if you have one who can go toe to toe with those types of players, whether it's in their PFF grades or whether it's on the final scoreboard every Sunday, then you obviously have a massive value here. So I went with Bryce Young. Curious if there was anybody else that you would have thought of here for them, but he's my top value guy for the Panthers.
No, it's probably the right call. I think a year from now, maybe we'll be talking about Tetero McMillan in this spot if he turns out to be everything that he's supposed to be with that 8th overall pick. But I think the idea, and we're going to talk about this a few times with these quarterbacks, is that when you have the quarterback on the rookie contract, it allows you to do everything else you need to do with your football team, right? They bought a bunch of pieces on defense. They drafted a receiver 8th overall to support him because he gave him that hope down the stretch the second half of the year. They've got a really good running back room that they've paid with Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, right? The offensive line is making a boatload of money. It's one of the most expensive offensive lines in the league. So I think they have built it right in using Bryce Young's value. It's allowed him to do that. They were just waiting for his play to match up with that value and get him to win ball games. Now, they didn't win a ton of ball games last year, but when you look at the progress he made down the stretch, it gives you hope for the next year or two and the rest of this rookie contract moving forward.
I like the Tetero McMillan call out. I thought about it. I didn't want to make him the pick here with him not playing a snap yet. But I mean, you've also got guys like Nick Scorton and Princely Monmielen, who, a couple years from now, maybe they are playing major impact snaps for them at a discounted rate with them on their rookie contracts. For the Chicago Bears, I just went with Caleb Williams. Again, it's sort of this thing where, Caleb Williams struggled last season, but obviously it was a dumpster fire behind the scenes and how things were going there. And it was never really going to look pretty when you think of all the factors that were going on there in Chicago. Cutting the pizza wrong, not being able to, watch film with Caleb Williams and teach him how he needs to watch film. Those two things alone will really set you back. So I went with him. It's a pretty expensive roster, I think. Montez Sweat, DJ Moore, Jalen Johnson, Tremaine Edmonds, Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. All of those guys are getting paid more than Caleb Williams is right now. But, you got guys like Joe Thuney, TJ Edwards, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker. Like, those guys are either going to get big money or are currently on big money deals as well. So it's an expensive group with the Chicago Bears, but I still think that Caleb Williams kind of has to be the pick here. In his second year in the league, he's $8.9 million on the cap, and certainly I think that him with Ben Johnson as offensive play caller there, it's going to be a lot better than it was the year before. Guys that you might be like, I thought about Darnell Wright here, as their right tackle, somebody who is an ascending offensive tackle and somebody who's playing really well on a rookie deal, but ultimately, I think the answer has to be Caleb Williams, but I wanted to throw out Darnell right there as well.
No, I think it's funny with Caleb because it goes back to the argument when they were heading into the last year's draft and they had the 2 first-round picks. Or no, there was 2 first-round picks this year, but they had that number 1 overall pick from Carolina. And when you look at when there was an argument about, do we reset the clock? Do we keep Justin Fields? And that was really the biggest argument in Caleb Williams' favor. Not only is he supremely talented, but you reset the rookie contract clock so you can build for another few years out further, whereas Justin Fields was entering his 4th year, and then you get into that 5th-year option decision, and it gets more expensive, and then you have to extend him if you're going to build around him. And I think resetting the clock with Caleb was definitely the right thing for the franchise when you look at now how they've built this offensive line, what they've added with the weaponry, what they're trying to add on defense, especially that defensive line. So again, having a cheaper quarterback gives you the ability to build the rest of the roster and spend money on the rest of the roster. Only other thing, Trev, going forward, I think we missed the Buffalo Bills here. I think
did we miss the Bills?
Going alphabetically, I didn't know if you just didn't have one for the Bills, or just are they not? Somebody's got to be valuable for the Bills, right? Somebody's doing good work on.
We have somebody who is absolutely valuable for the Bills. Good call out there for the Buffalo Bills. I went with cornerback Christian Benford. Now, he signs an extension, so you think about that as well. But currently, this year, he's $2 million on the cap. Next year, he's $7 million on the cap, and then it jumps up to 3 years of him being $20 million on the cap. So obviously, it takes a big jump with his extension there. But there's no guarantees on the deal in those 3 years in which he is $20 million on the cap. So you have a lot of flexibility on how you may be able to either get out of it or restructure it or however you want to do it. So I actually really like this contract and this extension for the Bills, who are rewarding a guy who is a really good player for them. 82.6 overall grade in 2024, 82.8 coverage grade. Christian Benford is a fantastic corner who they gave that extension to, but it's a team-friendly extension. So for him to be as little on the cap as he is over the next couple of years, and then even when that number shoots up, you have the flexibility to move that money around in a way that behooves you. Christian Benford gets the nomination for most value player here on the Buffalo Bills.
I would agree, and he's maybe, other than Josh Allen, maybe he's the most important player, because you talk about a team that was second to last in the league in coverage grade last year, but Benford was the one guy that came through for them. Now they're trying to fill in the rest of the unit, obviously drafting Maxwell Harrison across from him in the first round, maybe a bounce-back year from Taron Johnson in the slot. They got to get better as a unit, but Benford's definitely the one guy carrying it right now.
Philly native in the chat saying Ben Johnson voted against Tush Push. We got to boo that man. Sad. Scared to compete. It's true. They didn't think about that. Didn't think about that part. For the Cincinnati Bengals, this one was kind of tough for me. Ultimately, I landed on Trey Hendrickson because Trey Hendrickson, with his current contract, still a value player for them, even though he is one of the highest paid players on the team. His $21 million average salary is just 11th for edge rushers. And we saw last year just how good this guy is in creating total pressures, PFF grade, certainly sacks as well, but just like everything that he does. It felt like he was basically the only person on the Bengals defensive line that the other offensive line had to pay attention to, and yet he continued to produce. He's $18 million on the cap this year, which is fourth highest on the team now that T. Higgins and Jamar Chase have their extensions. So he's still in the top 5 of who the Bengals are paying on their books, but over the last 3 years, he's 7th in the NFL in total WAR, wins above replacement, for the edge rush position. And I talked about him being, only the 11th highest paid pass rusher in the NFL when you look at a per year average on the contract that he's currently on. So for as much as he is still getting a lot of money, it's not like we're talking about a guy who's not making a ton of money and deserves to get a lot more. Hendrickson still deserves to get more, even though he is making a lot of money here for the Bengals. So I feel like in his current contract, Hendrickson is actually the best value player for the Bengals.
Well, and this is the part where you understand why he's taken such a hard stance in these negotiations. You look at the money Myles Garrett just got. You look at the money T.J. Watt gets paid. You look at what Nick Bosa got in his extension. And Trey Hendrickson, as a pass rusher at least, has been just as good as those guys over the last 4 or 5 years, right? So you understand it. He led the league in sacks last year and edge defenders. It's one of those premium positions that's getting money now per year up into the 30s, right? And even Myles Garrett, $40 million a year. So you get it. I mean, it's a weird dynamic with the Bengals because all of their best players are extremely highly paid, and anybody who might give them some value just didn't play well last year, and Hendrickson's the one guy that kind of bridges that gap between the two. But, well-deserving. If he does get paid by the Bengals or somebody else a top salary, well-deserving of it considering what he's done, especially the last 4 years with the Bengals. But it's a tough spot they're in because of this, because he feels certainly like he should be paid more, and he's probably right.
For the Cleveland Browns, I feel like this might be a surprise name. I went with a newcomer here for them. I went with offensive guard Tevin Jenkins. And if you tell me that Tevin Jenkins is going to be healthy, he is worth way more than the $2.2 million that he is on the cap this upcoming season. Now, the reason why he's not in Chicago anymore is because he just wasn't available for them. He went through injuries. He was on and off the field. But when he was on the field, overall grades above 74.0 in each of the last 3 seasons. He even had a single season grade above 80 in one of those seasons. So this is a good starting caliber offensive guard that you are only paying $2.2 million on the cap. He's the 23rd highest paid player on the Cleveland Browns this year, and I think that constitutes a ton of value for what we have seen. If he is healthy, there is no question about it, in my opinion. He is going to outplay what they are paying him this season. So I went with Tevin Jenkins here for the Browns.
And he's probably going to play, considering you have Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, who both dealt with injuries last year and both are in their 30s. I think those two are going to start. Jenkins will likely start the season as a backup behind those two. But, considering what the Browns had in their offensive line injuries last year, I would expect him to play. And you're right. If he's healthy and he plays to the level that he's capable of, he's worth way more than that. And maybe he could parlay that into a starting job next offseason. I think he went to a situation where he can play a little bit. He can wait out injuries. For some reason, the market on him, because of the injuries, really, the market on him wasn't very hot this offseason. But this is a guy, you mentioned it, if healthy, solid starting guard. Maybe he becomes that for the Browns even in the future. I think when they have to look at a spot where they have to get behind, they have to get past, I should say, all these guys. They have 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen that are going to be at least 30 years old this year. Maybe Jenkins is a future solution for the Browns and still at a value contract because he's not making very much this year.
Yeah, I agree with those points there. Dallas Cowboys, I went with Micah Parsons here. I don't really think there's an obvious answer here for the Cowboys. When you look at Parsons, he's $24 million on the cap. And when you go through this exercise, you go like, whoa, okay, you're picking a guy who's a good value at $24 million a year. Yeah, if it's Micah Parsons, yeah, I absolutely am. He's second behind only Myles Garrett over the last 3 years in total wins above replacement or wins above average for the edge rush position. And so what he is bringing to the Cowboys and how he plays that position is just unbelievably valuable. He's had 3 straight seasons where he's been an elite player, elite pass rush grade and elite overall grade. So this is simply one of the best football players in the NFL. And at $24 million, even though that is a hefty number, that is still a major value on what Micah Parsons brings to the table and what he does for your defense. There's not really another obvious choice. Obviously, like Deron Bland has dealt with injury. He had a really great season where he created a lot of turnovers. He's $5.4 million on the cap this upcoming season. So maybe you could pick him. George Pickens, newcomer, obviously $3.6 million on the cap this year, depending on what he could be as their wide receiver too. But you're about to have to pay him a lot of money after this season if you want to keep him around. So that's not going to be a big value for long.
Tyler Smith? I think Tyler Smith is maybe the next guy I would go to.
Yeah, I think that Tyler Smith is probably the next player that I would go with. He's $4.2 million on the cap this season, and then they've got the 5th-year option for him, but that jumps all the way up to $21 million for him. So good value right now. I wouldn't say him over Parsons, but maybe I would have him as that next name for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, no, I think you're calling it right on Parsons, and that's why he's going to be looking to get a record-setting extension too. Because when he was on the field last year, especially after he came back, I believe it was Week 10, he came back from his injury. Dallas was either first or second in pass rush grade as a team. What he does, not only for his own individual production, but to set up the rest of the unit for success, he is one of those guys. Obviously, I mentioned the names before: Garrett, Watt, Bosa, Hutchinson will get that money eventually too. Parsons is one of the elite edge rushers in the league, and he can do so many things for you that he's worth way more even than the $24 million he's getting this year, and he's going to be looking to approach that $40 million number that Myles Garrett got from the Browns.
Salensi in the chat is saying it would say Pickens for George Pickens for the Dallas Cowboys, mainly due to them being eligible to potentially get a comp pick back if he leaves in free agency. I guess that goes into the equation as well. They traded, I believe it was a 3rd-round pick and a future 5th-round pick for him. Or when was the 5th-round pick? The 5th-round pick was 2027. So they traded a 2026 3rd-round pick, so next year's 3rd-round pick, and then the following year's 5th-round pick. So not a ton. It's not like you're giving up a ton, especially if you believe that you can get like a 3rd, 4th-round pick for Pickens in a comp pick, depending on what he is going to get elsewhere. Then obviously you're recouping a little bit of that. So that situation in and of itself does bring a little bit of value. So I did. It's a good call out there by Salensi, who gave us the $5 super chat. We appreciate you. Thanks for getting on the show. Thanks for the super chat there. But I also think that's a great point if you're factoring in George Pickens into this equation. For the Denver Broncos, I went with quarterback Bo Nix. I think that Nix is the highest value player that they have. $4.2 million on the cap this season. That makes him the 20th highest paid player on the Denver Broncos. Obviously, anytime you have a quarterback that gives you the chance to win games every single week, like I feel like Bo Nix does. Now, I'm not saying that means that he's going to be an all-pro quarterback, but Nix certainly in this offense, for even as a baseline of what we saw last year, he is somebody who's going to do the clean things well, operate well under a clean pocket. Can he do the outside of structure stuff a little bit better and even be even more dynamic this year. I think that's in the cards as somebody who liked Bo Nix quite a bit when he was coming out of Oregon. 72.8 passing grade last season. Even if that is the same this year, that is still a value player, because I think that will do enough for the Broncos to at least compete for that playoff spot. And if he is better, if he's got a passing grade in the 80s this upcoming year, then yeah, we're talking about a preferred wild card spot. Perhaps you're even competing for the division when it's all said and done, especially with that defense behind you. So I ended up going with Bo Nix to have a quarterback playing the way that he has last year, even as just a rookie, to be your 20th highest paid player. Yeah, that's probably going to win every single time.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the rookie quarterback contract thing, right? Again, and Bo Nix gave the Broncos everything he possibly could have in a rookie season last year, especially considering the expectations that we had for this team to be, in third or fourth place in this division and nowhere near a playoff spot. But they got a wild card spot. They won, 10 or 11 games. He doesn't, and I think you mentioned the big thing, he doesn't beat himself, right? The floor is going to be there. We'll see how high the ceiling gets if he can get into, the ranks of those elite guys like Jaden Daniels got into immediately. But when it comes to Bo Nix, he's not a guy who's going to beat himself. He's going to run Sean Payton's offense well. Everything is around him there, especially the offensive line. I love drafting R.J. Harvey, Cortland Sutton on the outside. You got some other weapons that, Evan Ingram at tight end now that you got that really improves your receiving at tight end. So, look, Bo, again, it's the rookie quarterback contract. And if you're getting that level of production that he gave you last year and then a step up from it this year at $4 million, you can't ask for any better than that.
For the Detroit Lions as the next team here, it's kind of one of two players, right? I feel like it was one of their two safeties who, my goodness, what a bargain they are getting on Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. I believe between the two of them, they are paying those two elite safeties $5.3 million total on the cap between those two guys. Brian Branch is even less than Kirby Joseph is, $2.1 million on the cap in 2025. He is the 30th highest paid player on the team. 83.7 defensive grade in 2024. He's somebody who could play strong safety for you. He could play in the slot. He could even play at the linebacker level for you, just playing as a box defender. Brian Branch is an elite football player. He's such a major difference maker. He's a tone setter. He's the type of player that you want in your secondary to do a lot of different things for you. Kirby Joseph, very valuable as well as that single high and even robber safety who can get a lot of plays on the ball for you. Obviously, he was fantastic at that last season. I can't remember what his coverage grade was off the top of my head, but I know he had an elite overall defensive grade last season. So to me, it's one of those two safeties. I ended up going with the guy who is getting a little bit less, $2.1 million, just because of the versatility of what Brian Branch brings to the table. But I went in with him as the best value player here for the Lions.
No, I think it makes sense. And Joseph just earned the big extension that he got, that those cap charges will kick in the next couple of years. But Branch certainly, and I think it was part of the surprising thing when the Lions got Brian Branch in the second round. I just was going back looking at your draft board. You had him as the 15th best player in that 2023 class, and he went somewhere, what was it, in the late 40s or somewhere in there?
I thought it was like 42.
Late. I think it might have even been closer to 48 or 49. I forget exactly what it was. But getting that guy in the second round, we all knew at the time, we were like, that's probably a first-round talent the Lions just stole, and you get to steal him at a second-round price as well. You just mentioned it, $2 million this year, one of the best safeties in football. I would easily argue the best pair of safeties in football that any team has. So the value he gives you, he's going to be in line for a huge extension at some point too. But, yeah, those two guys, they're honestly, other than Aiden Hutchinson, to me, they're the heart and soul of that defense, and they're the heart and soul of that coverage unit. Got to get better on the outside, got to get a little better pass rush outside of Hutchinson, but those two guys in safety, they give the Lions a chance to win every single week.
I forgot that Joseph got that extension, so that's even more evidence for Brian Branch being the selection there. Also, he went 45th. So it's funny. I said 42, you said 48. Smack dab in the middle.
As usual, the answer is somewhere between the two things that we present on this show. As usual, it's just we need a third. Where's Max to give us the middle answer when we need it?
Yeah, as long as we get you in the ballpark, if the truth is somewhere in between, we feel all right about it. For the Green Bay Packers, I went with Jaire Alexander. No, I'm just kidding.
You did. He's free.
That's true. He's not. Well, actually, he's negative value because he's dead cap for you over the next 2 years.
Right.
So actually,
that dead money kills you.
That would not be true. Hey, at least it was after June 1st, so they get to spread it out over 2 years, at least.
Oof.
For the Packers, I went with Edgerrin Cooper. And I don't know if this is necessarily, too early for this, but Cooper is getting paid $1.9 million in 2025. He's got 3 more years left on his rookie deal. He had an 84.1 overall defensive grade last year, a 90.1 pass rushing grade. He had the second highest overall defensive grade on the team behind only Xavier McKinney, who was phenomenal for them as that single high safety. So when I look at Cooper, it's a 1-year thing, but the way that he was able to play, especially as a downhill defender, as a run defender, as a pass rusher, he looked like one of the more impactful linebackers in the league that we will have moving forward, given his athleticism and how it really did not take a drop off at all. Because that's what he did great at Texas A&M, right? I was a little bit worried because it's like, okay, yeah, he had an elite coverage grade, but a lot of the coverage assignments for him, they weren't really, hey, we want you to backpedal and retreat and play intermediate and deep coverage. A lot of the coverage was, hey, you're covering the running back if they go into the flat. And that's essentially just a downhill assignment anyways. It's almost like a pseudo run defense assignment. And so I was a little bit worried if they were going to ask him to do more coverage things in the NFL, would he get exposed a little bit in that area? And he certainly didn't last year, but they didn't really put him in those situations. So if you allow him to just continue to play in the roles in which he did last year, Dalton, I think that this guy could be incredibly valuable for them over the next couple of seasons. So the way that Edgerrin Cooper played last year makes me want to choose him as their most valuable player right now.
I've got a fun fact for you because I was looking up some things that I was doing last week. Only 2 qualified linebackers, Trevor, got at least a 74 grade in run defense and coverage and as a pass rusher last year. Edgerrin Cooper and Zach Bond, who was the highest graded linebacker in football. Those are the only 2 guys. So when you talk about that versatility that he gives you, right, he looked better in coverage last year than we expected. He's a really good spy if you want him to spy those more mobile quarterbacks. Yes. He's an excellent run defender. As a pass rusher, as a blitzer, he's one of the best blitzers in the league already. The only other guy I might throw in this mix here is a guy on the offensive side of the ball for the Packers. Zach Tom is a former 4th-round pick, and what he's given them so far in his career at right tackle. This is one of the elite offensive linemen in football who's going to be due a huge payday next offseason, but Zach Tom also this year at just $3.5 million for the production he gives him at right tackle. I think that's the other guy I would mention here for the Packers.
Yeah, to get that type of value and production out of a 4th-round player, that's a good call out from you. I like that there. For Houston Texans, I think it's the obvious one. I think it's CJ Stroud. Now, there's a couple of other players that I think could make sense here. I like Jalen Petrie, honestly. I think Jalen Petrie is going to be a super dynamic player for them when he has been out on the field. I think that he has been able to showcase that, but it's hard to get away from CJ Stroud as that most valuable player for them and the highest value contract. $9.9 million on the cap this upcoming season, $11.5 the next season, and then you have that 5th-year option. 81.9 cumulative PFF passing grade over the last 2 seasons, and certainly we have just seen that Stroud can go toe-to-toe with some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and when that's the case and you're getting him at 1/5, if not 1/6 of the price of some of those players in the contract that we think that he is eventually going to sign in Houston, you're a major value player for you. So this one had to be CJ Stroud here.
Yeah, no, I think Stroud's the obvious choice as the quarterback. And one half, I would say, of the reason that the Texans have turned this around so quick. It's a distant second, but the second guy I have to throw out there is the guy that was taken 1 pick after Stroud and Will Anderson Jr., right? I think that's the reason that this Texans team turned around so quickly is because they nailed back-to-back picks, 2nd and 3rd overall between C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson. They're those 2 guys, along with Derek Stingley, I'd say, too, but he just got the big extension. That's the core of this team, along with Nico Collins as well. But Stroud and Anderson are the 2 guys that have turned this team around and have the Texans as the best team in the NFC South over the last couple of years.
For the Indianapolis Colts, I would love to say one of the quarterbacks, right? Because Anthony Richardson's on a rookie deal.
I thought it was Daniel Jones. I thought it was Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones is on a team-friendly contract, and Riley Leonard was a 5th-round pick. So I would love to say one of these quarterbacks. I can't in all good conscience do that. Instead, this one's a tie for me. I really didn't know who to pick between wide receiver Josh Downs and offensive tackle Bernhard Raimann. Now, I think some people might just go, hey, you just pick the offensive lineman, and that's fine. I could totally agree with that. Raimann, $3.3 million on the cap in 2024, 83.9 and 85.6 overall blocking grades for him over the last 2 seasons. But Josh Downs, He's only $1.5 million on the cap in 2025. That makes him the 27th highest paid player on the team. He's got 2 years left on his rookie deal, and he actually had the fourth highest wins above average number in 2024. That was higher than Ryman's. It was higher than Latu's. Like, it was higher than a lot of these other guys that I was deciding between. And so I think Josh Downs is going to be a major player for this team moving forward. I think that he is, whenever he is healthy, he is in for a ton of targets there. And so Ryman is the other one that I thought about here, because he is about to get a major payday as well. And I think that he has been playing well above what his pay has been over the last couple of years as a third-round pick. But one of those two, Josh Downs, Bernhard Raimann, I'd be cool with either of them for the Colts.
You know why I like the mention of both is I feel like they're two of the most underrated players in football. Last year when I watched Raimann over there on that left side next to Quentin Nelson, I was like, this is an elite left side of this offensive line, and it's not just because of Nelson. Their O-line is going to be fine. They got to work on, the guy replacing the guys at left and Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, obviously. But Raimann's spectacular there at left tackle. He's become such a consistent player. He's an underrated guy. And Josh Downs, honestly, when he was healthy, I thought he was their best receiver last year. I think what he does in the RPO game, what he does to pick up first downs, what he does his work after the catch, these are two excellent football players. You mentioned it. Just get this quarterback situation figured out somehow, some way, and you've got a really good supporting cast, and these two are a big reason why.
For the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think the obvious one is Brian Thomas Jr., $3.3 million on the cap in 2025, 83.3 receiving grade in 2024, and it looked like he was only getting better. He's one of those guys who, it's like in a basketball game where you go, man, if this was 5 quarters instead of 4, this other team wins the game. If the season, now I don't want to give Roger Goodell any ideas here, but if the season was 20 weeks long instead of 17, 18 or whatever, like, I feel like Brian Thomas Jr. was only getting better as the season was going on. So that gets us really excited about what 2025 is going to be for him. So I think he's a major value there as their go-to weapon. The other player that I would throw out here is total speculation, but it's Travis Hunter, right? I mean, like, you look at Travis Hunter, he's now on a rookie contract for you. He's going to be a stud wide receiver for them as well. He could very well be one of their best corners or secondary players if they actually play him there. And so to get a starter at 2 different positions playing on a rookie contract, I mean, he would be value as a corner on a rookie contract. He would be value as a wide receiver on a rookie contract. If you tell me that he's playing both positions, that obviously you have to just throw his name into the equation here. I don't know how many snaps he is going to get on offense versus defense. I don't know exactly how Jacksonville is going to do that. They have said that they think that, hey, he is a wide receiver first and foremost, and then they're out here tweeting training camp clips of him getting PBUs and interceptions playing as a corner. It's like, okay, what are you going to keep this guy off the field when you feel like you can be a better football team if he's out there at corner? So I'll throw Travis Hunter out there, but Brian Thomas Jr., I think, is the concrete answer for best value player.
Yeah, the fun thing with Hunter, and this was something we discussed a lot before the draft, is if he was even a top 25 to 30 player on both sides, I'm not even talking about the best player in football on both sides like he was in college, you're talking about the most valuable non-quarterback in the NFL. In value, I was looking at the WAR numbers one day, that would get you to around a low-end starter. Like, say, Travis Hunter could be as valuable as something like the 20th best starting quarterback in football, and those WAR numbers are basically reserved for quarterbacks when it comes to the top of the list. But, I mean, there is a chance that, and this is why it's so much fun that they traded up for him and they made such a bold move to get him, because he could be the most valuable non-quarterback, not just for the Jaguars, but in the entire NFL if he does play both ways in any capacity. And if he's elite at one and just solid at another, it's something when it comes to his second contract that we've never seen before, kind of like Shohei Ohtani in baseball, where you just go, well, he's got to make some unprecedented amount of money, right? Because if he's going to do both and he has the ability to do that, we've never seen it before, it's so much more valuable than any other player on the field.
This is the last team for me until we switch sides, and these will be the players that you selected here. But for the Kansas City Chiefs, I went with wide receiver Rashee Rice. I understand he's been injured. He's missed a lot of time last season. What did he play in? 2 games, 3 games, I think, before getting hurt. He's only $1.7 million on the cap in 2025, and he is going to be their go-to target once again, which he has really been over the last couple of years when he has been out there and healthy. 86.1 and 85.5 receiving grades over the last 2 years. He was an absolute stud. He was top 3 in, I think, receptions, and receiving yards for sure. Not touchdowns, but it was still early on in the season. He still had 2 touchdowns before he got hurt last season. So he was a top 3 receiver in total overall production. And just getting that type of volume for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations and is in a Super Bowl window, you've got a ton of value there. So Rashee Rice, for them to be able to get the value and the workload, the volume that they have over the last 2 years, and him only getting $1.7 million this upcoming season, I think that's going to be a major value for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think, too, guys, I got to be honest with you now, the cap hits over the next few years, eventually it'll catch up because it always does, but I was surprised maybe just for this year you didn't go with Patrick Mahomes. I know they're going with the constant restructures, but he's only got a cap hit of $28 million this year before it skyrockets. And then the other guy, a defensive stud who's entering the last 2 years of his rookie contract, Trent McDuffie also. I mean, just one of the best corners in football, bar none. Top 5 pretty easily for me. Inside, outside, he's going to get a massive extension, but I believe I just saw I think he's less than $4 million this year on the cap, and then he's got a 5th-year option. So McDuffie might really be the other one that I go with, but the value they've gotten out of Mahomes' contract, he's only got the 15th highest cap hit among quarterbacks this year. So when you look at all these other guys getting $50 and $60 million cap hits, and it's going to come from Mahomes here after this year, and they'll restructure it again because we know he's going to be there until he's probably 50 years old. But I think that's one to throw in there too, is the value they've gotten in this contract and what they've done with it the last few years as well.
No, that's a really good call out by you. I think the answer could very easily be Patrick Mahomes. The reason why I didn't think of it is because you're right. It's $28 million this year, which I suppose for this exercise, Patrick Mahomes would be the answer, getting only $28 million a year on the cap. But next year it's 78. The next year it's 74, and then 4 straight years in the 40s. But they'll restructure that. They'll move the money around there. Trent McDuffie's also a really good call out. For some reason in my head, I already thought that he got an extension and was one of those highest paid corners, because that is eventually coming, like you mentioned. But I think that Trent McDuffie, you're right, could also be in this conversation. I guess that the Kansas City Chiefs have a couple more guys for this than I originally thought. So that's a good call out by you. I think that all 3 of those are good examples of Mahomes certainly being a good value for them this year, McDuffie before the extension, and then just Rashee Rice playing on that rookie contract. So Brett Veach is one of the best general managers in the NFL, and that's not just because he drafted Patrick Mahomes and now he's coasting off of that. He still remains one of the best general managers in the NFL, and exercises like this can highlight why. Before we get to the final 16 teams, we're going through this whole exercise for every single team in the NFL, talking to all the parents out there, asking you guys a question: what your child's success looks like for you. Maybe it's them sort of owning their own house, owning their own business, traveling the world, whatever that looks like. You can help them out right now with a kids investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account for Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Your kids can't invest while they're minors, but this kids investment account allows you to invest on their behalf, gives their investments so much more time to grow. The whole thing is online. Setting up an account could take you as little as just 5 minutes, and then you just manage your child's account and monitor those investments right from your phone. The funds, it doesn't have to be, for when they're much older. It could be used for, when they're kids, tuition, tutors, sports, music classes, things like that. And when they're older, maybe you are helping them buy that first car, that first house, start their own business, travel the world, whatever that looks like. Starts just $20. There's no contribution limits to it. It's got tax advantages. All the funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000, plus there's no commission fees on it. Just a low flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET, fabric.com/PFFNFL. The portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. You can learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, starting off with your side of the bracket here. For the Las Vegas Raiders, I think it's starting off with an easy one. You went with Brock Bowers, their tight end. So talk to me about Brock Bowers being a value for him.
Yeah, obviously incredibly valuable when you look in the context of setting the NFL rookie record by a tight end with 1,194 receiving yards. Third in the NFL last year among tight ends in receiving grade, behind George Kittle and Trey McBride. And I'm glad it's those two guys because it's part of the context of the value of paying Brock Bowers only $4 million a year, or this year. That's his cap hit, 31st among all tight ends, $4.1 million. And you look at it in the context of those two guys, Kittle and McBride, who both just signed contracts worth $19 million a year this offseason. To get Bowers at just over 20% of that price, it's ridiculous value. And there's a chance that he's the best receiving tight end in football this year and for possibly the better part of the next decade, right? So when you look at, there's been a movement of, well, don't draft tight ends in the first round unless you're extremely sure of them, and we were on Bowers, but he still went 14th. I would still argue he went lower than he should have in that draft, and he showed why in his rookie year with a team with the second worst passing grade in football, right? Now he's got Geno Smith in here. They're adding to this offense. They've got a legitimate run game with Ashton Jinty. So when you look at the opportunities that Bowers could have now to win downfield along with his ability to win after the catch, he's a top 5 tight end in football right now. He's getting paid the 31st most out of the group. I mean, some of the names that I saw getting paid more than him, Adam Troutman, John Bates, backups for a lot of teams that are getting more than Brock Bowers at his production. He's going to be a bargain through the entire 5 years of his rookie deal.
Yeah, I feel like Colton Miller is also a value for them as well, just at $15.6 million on the cap this upcoming season. But it is an obvious one that Brock Bowers would be the choice there for the reasons that you listed. Just wanted to shout out Colton Miller because I do think that they're getting some value there. For the Los Angeles Chargers, you went with wide receiver Ladd McConkey here, coming off an incredible rookie season. What made you pick Ladd?
This came down to their first 2 picks from last year. I was basically, I don't want to say flipping a coin, because McConkey getting drafted later at a cheaper price. And the idea, I think the Chargers went into it between Joe Alt and a receiver with that 5th overall pick going, okay, what kind of value can we get out of a receiver in the second round as opposed to a tackle with that group of tackles in last year's class? And they did it right. And McConkey gets it here for being a second-round pick, $2.27 million on the cap this season for a guy who was 12th in the NFL in receiving grade last year and an 85 in his rookie season. Look, we talked a lot about Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. Ladd McConkey had as good a year as any of them, if not better than some of those guys, right? Or Rome Odunze going in the top 10. McConkey had a better year than him. So when you look at it, was the idea the Chargers had that you loved last year of, okay, if we take Joe Alt at 5, what are our alternatives? Who can we get in the second round or maybe even the third round that can make our offense a whole lot better? McConkey is that guy, and now to have a number 1 receiver, and he is a legitimate number 1 receiver, to get him at $2.3 million this year and for the entirety of a second-round rookie contract, it's a fantastic value.
Yeah, I think some people might look at this and be like, how are you not just taking the offensive tackle? You got to take Joe Alt. Look at the value there. I certainly can understand the arguments, as you mentioned there. It wasn't necessarily a coin flip, but it was a debate here. But Joe Alt, okay, he makes $7.5 million on the cap this upcoming season. Then it jumps to 9, and then it jumps to 10.5. Now, you gladly pay that for an offensive tackle of his caliber. I understand that. But Ladd McConkey, like you mentioned, it's 2.2 this year, and then it's 2.7, and then it's 3.1. I mean, this is an insane bargain for this player who was unbelievable for you as a rookie. So I think that just to the people that would be like, no, this is Joe Alt, and it's not even close, there's just the money part of it that just makes it such a deal for McConkey if he continues to play well and be a wide receiver 1 caliber player for the Los Angeles Chargers. For the Rams, you went with another rookie, a guy coming off a really good rookie season in Jared Verse. Unbelievably productive, especially when it came to the total pressures generated. So Verse as their most valuable player. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, and you know what? I might have actually erred here because I forgot Puka Nacua hasn't even gotten an extension yet. So I think maybe we just talk about both of these guys, because I thought he got an extension and he hasn't yet. I'm like, man, but as good as Puka Nacua is too. So, but Verse, I mean, what you got out of him as a first round rookie last year, leading the league in pressures and immediately becoming one of the best edge defenders, one of just 2 edge defenders with an 80+ run defense and pass rush grade last year. The only other one was TJ Watt. So when you're talking about Verse being in the company of those elite guys at the price that edge defenders get nowadays, we've mentioned it, close to that $40 million range that Myles Garrett's getting, Jared Verse looks like he's on a track to get that eventually. So to have that value, and then Puka Nacua, like I mentioned, he was, a 5th round pick, getting 5th round money, barely making over $1 million this year and next year. He's going to get the massive extension as well. So it's really those 2 guys, and that's the reason the Rams have potentially a Super Bowl contending window here in the next year or 2 with these 2 guys at the core of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why does it feel like, even though he's only been in the league 2 years, why does it feel like Puka Nacua has been in the league for like 10 years?
It does.
Well, I don't get this at all. I forgot he was still on a rookie deal. It's unbelievable. I completely Puka Nacua is 24. Why does it feel like he's 30?
We've talked so much about him over the last 2 seasons that it does make you feel like he has been in the league for a long time. He had the highest receiving grade of any receiver last season. He was making less than $1 million total in the year to do it. I know that, he obviously wants to play ball and everything like that, but given the last 2 years that they have had, I don't know, are you allowed to hold out after 2 years if you only have a 4-year deal? Are you allowed to hold out when he is? I don't know if that's really a thing, because I know that there's some timing of when you can renegotiate and get those new deals done and everything like that. But, man, what an insane value. This is, outside of quarterback, this is the most valuable contract in the NFL, right? I think so.
Nacua, yeah. I mean, as a 5th-round pick and having $1 million cap hit, yeah, I would say so. As long as he's healthy, he was battling the injuries last year. Yeah, most likely. Yeah, I think that's one I wrote off Nacua because I was like, oh, he's already getting paid, right? And he's not. I forgot he's only. How has he only been in the league 2 years with as much as we've talked about him? It's insane.
For the Miami Dolphins, you went with their tight end Jonnu Smith, who been a part of some trade speculation talks. I mean, he had a really great season for them last year, and now they're talking about potentially moving on. I don't really know what's going on in Miami. Not going to lie. I just don't. You trade away Jonnu Smith, trade away to Jalen Ramsey. I feel like it's just a matter of time before Jalen Ramsey's no longer on this team. I don't really know what the Dolphins are doing. If they have success this year, hey, salute to them. I'm not going to be a big Dolphins believer this year, but you went with Jonnu Smith as their top value player. Talk to me about Smith.
Yeah, I was flipping a coin between him and Jalen Waddle, and I went with Smith here because I wanted to highlight the part where we've seen this trade speculation around him, particularly with the with the Pittsburgh Steelers, so we could reunite with Arthur Smith from their days with the Atlanta Falcons. There's been some rumors around that, but look, Jonnu Smith had his best season in the NFL by far last year. He went to an offense that emphasizes the after the catch ability. He was 5th in the NFL in receiving grade, 84 receiving grade, 5th among tight ends. And this year, $4.6 million, only 27th among tight ends. And I would argue in this offense, he's pretty easily a top 10 to 12 guy. So I think the value that he gives you, similar to what I mentioned before with Brock Bowers, even though Bowers is obviously a lot younger, but Smith found the perfect offense to go to. There was times last year when he was their best offensive player. I don't know why they would trade him either. I mean, Ramsey, I get it because he's got the big contract. If they're trying to clear out salary cap space, they're kind of a mess when it comes to that. But Smith is everything you want in that buy low candidate that had a big year for you. Keep him around and have him as the third weapon in this passing game. And if Tua's healthy, their offense can still be pretty good. I don't really understand why they would trade him. I think he's found a perfect situation. I think he's a perfect player for their offense, and they got really good value for him last year, and they can do it again this year if they keep him.
Yeah, I don't really see anybody else. I wondered if Kid or Kohu was just making absolutely pennies on the dollar.
Jalen Waddle would have been the other choice for me.
I think you're right. He's making $8 million this year. James Daniels, depending on how good he is, he's making 2.6, and he was an elite player, very small sample size last year, but he was really good for the Steelers before he got hurt. I think that could be sort of like a Tevin Jenkins situation where if he plays the whole year, maybe he ends up really outplaying that $2.6 million cap hit that he is this year. But yeah, I think those are the players there for the Miami Dolphins. Minnesota Vikings, you went with wide receiver Jordan Addison. Obviously somebody who's not making a ton because he is on a rookie contract, but yeah, what about Addison makes him the pick here for the Vikings?
Yeah, there's actually quietly a lot of highly paid players on this team. When you look at Christian Darrisaw and Justin Jefferson and all the guys that make boatloads of money now for this team. But Jordan Addison, even as a high-end number 2 receiver who's put up right around 900 yards in each of his first 2 seasons, 73.8 receiving grade in his first 2 seasons, and working with a lot of different quarterbacks on this team, right? We know that's a theme with all the injuries. Last year you had Sam Darnold, and Addison obviously a big part of his success, but $3.75 million on the cap this year. And when I think you even look at it in the context of, okay, even if Addison doesn't become Justin Jefferson or A.J. Brown or one of those guys, when you look at the contracts that mid-level receivers are getting, number 2 type receivers, 12, 15, 18 million. Some of them, Chris Godwin got 22 million. He's one of those high-end number 2 type guys. Jordan Addison getting less than $4 million for the production he gives you, and he's probably going to continue to get better over the next couple of years. You're going to look at him when his time for an extension or a free agent contract comes up, probably going to be in the low 20s, but the production you get out of him now for less than $4 million is spectacular. One of the best number 2 receivers in football, I think, and that's going to continue this year. He's going to be a big part of any success that J.J. McCarthy has in Minnesota as well.
Yeah, you got a couple of players who it's going to be interesting to see sort of like how they pan out, what they do this upcoming season. I think Dallas Turner, how he gets into this defensive line rotation with him only being $3.5 million on the cap this year, I think could be a big time value for them. Mekhi Blackmon at corner, I think is going to have an opportunity to start on the outside for them, and he's $1.4 million on the cap because where was Blackmon drafted? What round was he? He was a 3rd round pick. So, I mean, you're just getting a ton of value there if you can get a 3rd round pick who's starting for you at corner and $1.4 million on the cap. So I'd throw him in there as well, but wouldn't be picking any of these guys over Addison. I think you made the right choice there.
I think one more I want to throw in as a former UDFA. How about Ivan Pace Jr., what he's done as an undrafted guy his first 2 years, and he's only going to make $1 million this year. That's somebody who's going to make plenty more than that. He's a very, very solid player. Should have been drafted. The only reason he didn't get drafted because he was 5'10", but you knew when he went to Brian Flores, when he got signed, it was like, you know what, this guy's got a chance because he's just the type of football player that Flores loves. So, Minnesota, even if it takes a longer term contract, if they get an extension done with him, it's probably not going to be for a boatload of money. He's not going to be one of the highest paid linebackers in the league, but what they've gotten out of him as a UDFA has been fantastic too.
For the New England Patriots, you went with a player who I think is one of the best value contracts in the NFL, and that's Christian Gonzalez, with how he played as a rookie and then certainly how he played last year. When you get a shutdown corner, somebody who you could build your secondary game plan around every single week, you've got somebody who's a stud, especially when they're playing on that rookie contract. So Christian Gonzalez, I agree with you, one of the best value players in the NFL here.
Another guy, rookie contract, premium position, 9th in the NFL in coverage grade over his first 2 seasons in the league. Obviously, the first one was cut short due to an injury, but when he's healthy, I think he's absolutely one of the best corners in football. And you've got Gonzalez and Carlton Davis now on the outside for New England in a pretty stacked defense all the way down for New England. Gonzalez is a big key to that. The value that they're getting out of him allowed them to pay guys like Milton Williams and Robert Spillane. His time will come to make all that money, but the fact that they're getting such surplus value on possibly a top 10 corner right now, it's an excellent thing for New England to have. And I really think their defense is going to be really good this year.
Certainly, with Vrabel there now, I think that the turnaround that the Patriots are going to have, I think the Patriots, I don't know if they're going to get a wild card spot, but I certainly think that they will be competitive for one. I think it obviously depends on Drake May and how much he really takes that next step in his second season in the NFL, but I think the defense is going to look a lot better than what it was last year. You've got a head coach and an offensive coordinator in Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels who have been there before, who have coached very well in some of the biggest games, and they've overachieved in certain areas. They've correctly achieved when the expectations were high on them. So I have so much faith in this coaching staff and what they could potentially be moving forward. And Gonzalez, big reason why. New Orleans Saints, you went with wide receiver Chris Olave here. $6.1 million on the cap this upcoming season in 2025. The Saints are sort of tough to figure out. They're a bit of a mixed bag. They're in between, hey, this is a team that feels like they should rebuild heavily, and yet they won't lean into that entirely. What makes Chris Olave the selection here for you?
I mean, if he's healthy, he's one of the best receivers in football. He's a legitimate number 1 receiver, and again, we've been seeing the money that number 1 receivers get in the mid to high $30 million range now. What Jamar Chase is getting, what CeeDee Lamb is getting, what so many of these big money receivers are getting. You're getting Chris Olave this year, and similar to some other 2022 guys. Well, I'll tell you, between 2022 wide receivers and cornerbacks, they're about to be rich, every single one of them. But $6 million on the cap for a number 1 receiver. The only question is health, really, but since he's coming to the league, he's had the 13th best receiving grade in the NFL. He's a legitimate number 1. He's just got to stay healthy.
Justin Reed's only getting 3.8?
That's one I thought about as well, but I think they backloaded it somehow into the second and third year, too.
Let's see. 3.8 this year, 11.5 the next year, 11.5 the next year, and then a void year.
Yeah, the Saints are always just pushing it forward. Always, they never just pay their bills right now. Never happens.
I mean, Pete Warner too.
Like the Kings.
Oh yeah, Pete Warner's also pretty backloaded. He's 2.8. He's 2.8 this year, and then 7.9, 8.2, and then the void year, the 2.3. All right, yeah, it's probably Chris Olave. Those are the two names that jumped out to me as well. Outside of that. The New York Giants, you went with two. Couldn't decide. How could you? Elite quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Tough to decide between those two dudes. So you went, all jokes aside, you went up with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston as the two highest value players for the New York Giants. So talk to me about it. How'd you land on these two as the options here?
So the obvious one would have been to just pick Malik Neighbors and run with it, right? But I think the idea of this Giants offseason and how it all went down was because they got these two quarterbacks, Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, at a combined $14 million cap hit. That's roughly what the Steelers are paying Aaron Rodgers. That's what the Colts are paying Daniel Jones. So when you're talking about you got both of these guys early in free agency, or Wilson took a little longer, but you got these two guys in free agency, and neither one of them was that bad last year. Russell Wilson, a 79.5 PFF grade. It was better than anything the Giants had, and he was even better than Aaron Rodgers. Jameis Winston, I would argue still one of the best backups in football. And you're getting him at, what is it, a 2-year and $8 million contract, 73.5 PFF grade last year. If you told me to pick one backup quarterback to come in and win a game for me, it might be Jameis Winston, maybe Kirk Cousins.
He's at least going to let it fly.
He's at least one of the first 2 or 3 names I'd pick, and he's going to let it fly. And then when you look at it, what that value allowed them to do, right? When you talk about, okay, even though they didn't get, I know they wanted Matthew Stafford, they didn't get him. They would have had to pay him a boatload of money. But if you get Matthew Stafford, you might not get Javon Holland. You might not get Paulson Adebo. You might still be thinking about taking one of these quarterbacks behind Stafford and not using your draft capital all that wisely, right? And then trying to figure out what else is going on. You might not have kept Darius Slayton. I think getting these two guys at the value that they did, it allowed you to make all those other moves that you did to make the defense especially better. And then it really gave you the breathing room to not have to take a quarterback 3rd overall. And now you've got Abdul Carter on that defensive line, right? So I just think Is it instantly gratifying for the Giants? Are they a playoff contender? I don't know. It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. But these two guys are an improvement, Wilson and Winston, on what they had last year, because last year was just a disaster. And I think what you get is they're going to be able to throw the ball downfield. The Giants on 10-plus yard throws had the 2nd worst passing grade in the league last year. Wilson had the best deep passing grade in the league last year. Jameis Winston, we know, is going to let it rip down the field. So I think when you look at the change and what they're trying to do on offense and for the value they got it, I actually think getting these two quarterbacks at a combined $14 million sets them up at least to give them a chance at success this season.
Your New York Jets, you picked their wide receiver Garrett Wilson here. So I think you went with the obvious one, the star on the rookie contract. But anybody else that you thought of here for the Jets?
It's a coin flip between him and Sauce Gardner. I mean, they were drafted the same year, premium positions, just both spectacular football players that are about to make a boatload of money. You could do either one. Garrett Wilson, an 85.4 receiving grade since 2022. Sauce Gardner is arguably the best cornerback in football over his first 3 years. So it's both of them. It's the 2022 draft. It's really the one thing. That draft is the one thing the Jets have done right over the past 5 or 6 years, and these two guys as the first 2 picks, number 4 and number 10, Sauce and Wilson. I take either one of them. It's Sauce Gardner, it's Garrett Wilson. They're both about to be very, very rich.
Yep. I think I would have went with Sauce here, but like you said, I think both of these guys are worthy of the conversation. The Philadelphia Eagles, you went with cornerback Cooper DeJean, who was their 2nd-round pick. Obviously, you could probably go with him or Quinyon Mitchell, but Quinyon Mitchell's going to make more money because he was the 1st-round pick. Yeah, just talk to me about why DeJean was the pick here for the Eagles.
I mean, you mentioned it, 2nd-round pick. We knew he was a value when he was drafted. I think you had him in the top 10 or 12 of your board when he was drafted, and he got taken. He got taken in the 2nd round. We all knew it. It was like, oh, they should not have gotten this guy in the 2nd round. Howie Roseman did it again. Now he's on a 2nd-round contract. He's making $2 million this year, and he was the highest-graded cornerback in the NFL and got a pick 6 in the Super Bowl, and everything that he did, I would argue, is the best slot corner in the NFL right this minute. So as long as they can keep him in there, he can play on the outside, and Vic Fangio's even said, look, he might play on the outside some in our base defense as well, but best slot corner in football, highest graded corner in the NFL last season, 2nd-round contract, making $2 million a year. The other guy I actually thought about with this, but the future cap hits, and kind of in the same way that it is with Patrick Mahomes, is I thought about putting Jalen Hurts here because he's only got a $21 million cap hit this year, which is not even in the top 15, but DeJean and the work he did last year, just unreal. We knew it was coming when he was drafted. He should not have been a 2nd-round pick, and the fact that, and Quinyon's a good call out too because he was spectacular, but DeJean being the highest graded corner as a rookie, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think if you're going to pick one of the corners, you're going to pick DeSheen just because he's cheaper. And then I think the other person that you correctly brought into the conversation is Jalen Hurts, just because Jalen Hurts' money this year is really not too bad. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, we started the show talking about Aaron Rodgers, and here we are an hour and a half later still talking about Aaron Rodgers. You have him as the best value player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm curious if he will talk to me about Aaron Rodgers, but if he would not have signed with the Steelers, who would have been the choice here for
it would have been harder. I thought about Joey Porter Jr., but he kind of struggled some last year. I think the center, Zach Frazier, it might be up there, right? Because the problem is you look at, I think with this exercise, and you've seen it for the most part, we've looked at a lot of premium positions, right? And you look at, okay, wide receiver. Well, DK Metcalf's making $30 a year. It's not going to be him. Cornerback, maybe it's Porter, but he kind of struggled last year. Edge rushers, all their edge rushers for the most part are filthy rich, especially TJ Watt, right? Highsmith's getting money. I know Nick Herbig is in. He's a good player, but I don't know that he was the number one guy I would put here. So I think as far as probably Zach Frazier, I think the center for the rookie year that he had is the one that I would go with. But Rodgers, okay, when you look at if they take the full brunt of that $13.6 million on the cap this year, that's 19th in the NFL when it comes to cap hits among quarterbacks. If they push some of it into void years or whatever they want to do, I don't know why you do it with that small an amount, but they could. This teams do weird things for the salary cap, but it would get outside the bottom 20 if you get any further below that. Rodgers, it's so weird with him because it was inefficient, but he was 16th in passing grade last year. I think Russell Wilson was 12th, so it's not that big a drop off. $13 million for a starting quarterback is not that bad, and they don't have a ton of great candidates here. So if he does what they need him to do, and he's a competent starter who's roughly on the same level as Russell Wilson last year, and he gets into the playoffs, that's a pretty good value at $13.5 million.
I agree. I do. And I also agree. I think that Zach Frazier's the next guy in there. Like what he does for their offensive line. I mean, I think he's going to be an absolute anchor for them moving forward. So I really do think that if Rodgers wasn't on this team, Zach Frazier would have been my answer there. San Francisco 49ers, I really like the call out here of this one. You went with wide receiver Juwan Jennings. So not the guy that they invested the first round pick in Ricky Pearsall. You went with Juwan Jennings, who was able to step up really well last year, especially after Brandon Ayuk went down with injury. So this is a team that for a while was paying a lot of premium to a lot of these other players. Now with Brock Purdy making a lot of money, that's not exactly the case anymore, or there's some guys who are making a lot of money that aren't there. So you went with a guy who still holds a lot of value for them and was really productive in 2024 in Juwan Jennings.
Absolutely. Before last offseason, he signed a 2-year, $11 million contract, figuring, okay, he's a depth piece, he's been around, he's a decent player. He broke out last year, especially after Brandon Ayuk went down with a season-ending injury, and obviously Christian McCaffrey was out, so the Niners were short on receiving options, and Jennings is the guy that stepped up, especially against man-to-man coverage. It's kind of a theme with this 49 team that they struggled against man-to-man coverage last year, aside from Juwan Jennings, and an 83.7 receiving grade, 16th best in the NFL overall last year. So I think you're talking about a guy who not only broke out and had a big-time season at the value because he's only making just over $4 million against the cap this year. You're talking about a guy who's a very important piece with McCaffrey trying to get back healthy, Ayuk trying to get back healthy. Ricky Pearsall obviously didn't have the rookie year that he wanted to for several different circumstances. Jennings is someone I think extremely important. If he continues the momentum he had coming out of last year, now you talk about this offense, I think, being a playoff caliber offense with several legitimate receiving threats, along with right now the best tight end in football in George Kittle.
For the Seahawks, you went with their running back, Kenneth Walker. I think that Walker... I think that when I look at his contract, I do agree with you that the value is really good. I get worried with Walker because over the last 3 years, not only has he missed time, he's even hurt, he's been unavailable at times. He's also gone down in efficiency. I believe his rushing grade is not his rushing. His rushing grade didn't go down. I think the forced missed tackles went down. I think the yards after contact went down. I think the yards per attempt average all went down for him over the last 3 seasons. And so I get a little bit worried about that. I think I would have went with wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba because I think he's going to be their guy moving forward, and I think he's making like $3.3 million on his rookie contract here. But you went with Walker, so talk to me about why you went with Walker here as their value.
Yeah, there's a lot of good candidates. There's some really good young players on this team, right? Devin Witherspoon's another guy who's going to get a lot of money soon too. But you look at Kenneth Walker, and I think it is when he's healthy what you're looking for in a running back. I eventually had to get one running back on this list. They're not all just dead value guys out there. But look, $2.7 million on on the cap this year, it's only 34th among running backs. So you're talking about, again, a second-round pick, not making a ton. Even if he doesn't get some big extension, if he can carry over a full season what he had last year, the fourth best rushing grade in the league last year at 91.3, actually tied with Josh Jacobs for fourth. So when you look at what Walker can give you when he's on the field, he's really, really good. They just have to get this offensive line going, and I do wonder how much better he can be in Clint Kubiak's system, coming in with the outside zone schemes and really wanting to run the football. So a lot of good candidates for the Seahawks. This was one of the harder ones you mentioned. Smith and Jigba. Charles Cross was up there too. That's another guy I thought about. Devin Witherspoon. So just a lot of, but even Boye Mafia, solid player at a lower rate. I believe he was a second-round pick as well. So Seahawks, they got a good young nucleus. They just really have to figure out this offensive line.
Yeah, Charles Cross only making $6.8 million on the cap this season, $17.5 next year on the fifth-year option. But man, he is also, I think, really good value for the Seahawks team. I think he's one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. For the Buccaneers, you went with their quarterback, Baker Mayfield, who, what was it, not this past offseason, the offseason before, signs a 3-year extension for this team and comes back, and they give him the money, and they devote that faith to him for the next 3 seasons. Last year being the first. Why'd you end up going with Mayfield here?
I think signing that contract, right, 3 years and $100 million at the time, allowed them to do so many other things that needed to happen for this team to continue to have success, right? When we talked about Jason Light working his magic of, okay, he re-signed Mike Evans again, and he re-signed Antoine Winfield and Tristan Wirfs and all of the core guys of this team, it's made possible because Baker Mayfield in a year like this year is getting the 15th highest cap hit in the league. It's not exorbitant. And then when you look at not just, okay, he's a decent value, we've got a starting quarterback at a reasonable price, he had the 6th best PFF grade in football last year. He played like a borderline elite quarterback, and you even look at games like that last, I'll never forget that Week 18 game against the Saints when the Bucs were really struggling, and he comes out and just about starts a fight in the beginning of the third quarter and then leads them to a division title, right? And he's led them to the playoffs the last couple of years. So I just think when you look at the value you're getting out of Mayfield for the caliber of play that he's giving you, plus the salary and the fact that he allowed them to sign all of the, even Chris Godwin this year, that allows him to sign all those other core guys, it's a spectacular value for the entire team. And then the way his contract is structured is even if for any reason he bottoms out this year, well, it's pretty easy to get out of the last year of the deal. So I think it's just a spectacular way that Jason Light has built this team and built it around Mayfield with getting value from multiple different players and getting that surplus value from Baker.
Yeah, I think there's really only 2 players that I would argue outside of Mayfield who I agree with all the points that you made. Luke Gedeke is only making $3.8 million as their right tackle and somebody who's been really solid for them. It's the last year of his rookie deal, so they'll have to pay him after this season. And then sort of Yaya Diaby, $1.4 million on the cap. Look, if he's your best pass rusher and he ends up being somebody who can get 10 sacks for you and a good PFF pass rush grade, good consistent pass rush win percentage, then obviously that's a massive value for you if your top pass rusher is only making $1.4 million. But Diaby is somebody who I think is really solid. I think he hasn't necessarily developed into that one-on-one pass rush winner. He plays very powerful, but I don't think that either of those guys I would argue over Baker Mayfield. I would just say that I would throw their names into the hat as ones that could make sense.
Only other one, maybe Bucky Irving too. Just fourth round pick. Yeah, fourth round pick, elite numbers last year, 2-way player. Bucky Irving might fit in that mix also. I know again we only had one running back when I threw Kenneth Walker on this list. We didn't have another one. Bucky Irving might have the argument if he keeps doing what he did last year. Yeah,
because he's got $1.1 million on the cap. I think Savasier Dennis, their linebacker, at $1.1 million as well. Like, he hasn't really proven it yet, but they love him, and I think the reason why they didn't feel the need that they had to draft a linebacker really high in this draft is because they love him a lot. And so if he plays next to Levante David and he's excellent, that's another player who could be great value for them. The Tennessee Titans, you went with a guy who's going into his second year at a really good rookie season in defensive tackle, T'Vondre Sweat. So what made Sweat the guy here for the Titans?
Yeah, this was actually just really tough because there's not a ton of value on this Titans roster right now. It's kind of an expensive offensive line. You've got L'Jarius Sneed, who got the big contract at corner, but there's not a lot of young guys in the secondary. I wasn't going to put Cam Ward just, because he's a rookie, like you mentioned. I didn't want to put any rookies on this list, but eventually they're hoping it's Cam Ward. But look, T'Vondre Sweat, second-round pick from last year, only getting less than $2.2 million million on the cap this year. He was 15th in PFF grade among defensive tackles last year. He came in right away and made a huge impact, especially in the run game. I know everybody loves the fumble return with the stiff arm and everything like that with him rumbling down the field, but he's a really good football player. And when you look at that price compared to what you look at some of the defensive tackles making even in the low teens, 10, 12, $14 million range, T'Vondre Sweat's a better player than a lot of them, and they're going to get really good value for the next 3 years out of him. So it was hard to find one for the Titans, but Sweat as a really good second-round pick from last year, I think was the right call. I would argue he was their best draft pick so far last year, at least through one season, and he's only getting barely over $2 million this year.
Yeah, I feel like that's the only one. I don't really know who else.
So it'll be Xavier Restrepo soon. That's who it'll be soon. You'll see.
Sure. Cam Ward hopes. Washington Commanders, we're ending with a very obvious one. It's Jaden Daniels, Offensive Rookie of the Year and just overall Rookie of the Year. Last season, he was absolutely sensational. He jumpstarts the Commanders, rebuild, restart, whatever you want to call it, opens their winning window wide open with how he played last season, and obviously with him having a lot of years left on that rookie contract. It does not get easier, and it does not get better than this, the situation that the Commanders are in.
Just the right way to end it, Trev. You saved the best for last. It was funny because when we were going through this list, and I'm driving back from Chicago, and you're like, all right, do you want the back half of the list? I was like, all right, fine, yeah, do whatever you need to do. And Jaden Daniels is already there typed in for me. You already knew. That's come on now. Anytime I get to wax poetic about Jaden, I'm gonna do it, right? I mean, even at $8.5 million as a second overall pick last year, 5th best PFF grade in football in his rookie season, and tied Russell Wilson for the best rookie season we've ever seen. It's allowed them to go get Marshawn Lattimore, to go get Deebo Samuel, to go get Laramie Tunsil, to make all the moves that they want to make for championship contention. Jaden Daniels is probably, if we do this list for the next 4 years as well, Jaden Daniels is probably going to be the guy here if he keeps playing as well as he did in his rookie year.
There we go. 32 teams. Most valuable player. Maybe I should say that differently. The player who holds the most value contractually for every team. So I don't want to say that they're every team.
The biggest bargain,
MVP.
Trevor.
The best bargain players for every single team. There we go. We would love to hear your thoughts as well. Some other players who maybe we did not list off for your team, who you think deserve a shout out, who are playing above what they are getting paid. That's it for us on the live stream side of things this week. Obviously, every Monday we are doing this. We're covering the entire league every single Monday, but we're going to have more videos for you throughout the week. So if you don't subscribe to the channel, please do so. You don't want to miss any of those. We've got some great film breakdowns that Dalton is continuing to do, some more PFF rewrites that'll be out very, very soon. And we're continuing to talk football here in the offseason to make sure that you guys are ready for that 2025 NFL season. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying thank you guys so much for watching the PFF NFL show. We'll see you guys next time.